Hello all. My name is Emily Swafford. I'm Manager of Academic Affairs at the American Historical Association, and I'd like to welcome you to today's free webinar entitled Bringing Career Diversity to Your History Department, a free webinar on upcoming faculty institutes. Hold on one second. So thank you for attending today's webinar. It will be recorded and made available on the website, so if you lose your connection or you miss something, don't worry, you will be able to see it later. So as part of my job, I direct the AHA's Career Diversity for Historians initiative, which is funded by the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation. And today's webinar is intended to give you a little overview of the history of the initiative over the past few years, how we got to where we are, what we are hoping to do in this next phase of the initiative, which includes a series of career diversity graduate fellowships, as well as the faculty, as well as a series of faculty institutes. And what I'm hoping to do is answer some questions about applying to the faculty institutes, as well as the initiative as a whole. And if we have time, to do some Q&A as well. Much of what I will refer to is available on the AHA website, either on or linked to the Career Diversity landing page, which is historians.org/career diversity, all one word. So given that I'd like to not take up too much time from people, I'm going to go ahead and start and give a quick history of where this initiative came from. And if you've heard this before, bear with me. I will try to get through it pretty quickly and answer questions at the end. So, Career Diversity for Historians actually started in 2011 with a jointly written article by Jim Grossman, Executive Director of the AHA, and then President of the AHA, Tony Grafton. The article was entitled No More Plan B, and it was a sort of exploration of, or a recognition of what history PhDs should be able to do with their PhDs, and it was sort of an attempt to gauge some interest, and it generated a lot of interest, especially from history PhDs who were employed beyond the professoriate, who contacted the AHA to ask how they could help us, and also an invitation from the Mellon Foundation to see if there's something the AHA could do to address this situation of doctoral education for historians. And so what we did, the first step of this initiative, was to embark on some research, like good historians. We convened a series of focus groups that included employers, history PhDs outside the academy, and ACLS, the American Council of Learned Societies Public Fellows. And we also embarked on a data gathering campaign about career outcomes, and career outcomes for history PhDs that we used a web scraping methodology for. So from the focus groups, we learned a series of key things, the biggest of which was sort of distilling from these conversations, we learned 5 key skills that PhDs need to succeed outside the academy that they don't learn in grad school. And these are communication, collaboration, quantitative literacy, intellectual self-confidence, and the 5th, really a separate skill but a thread that runs through them, which is digital literacy. I'll come back to these skills later. And then what we learned from the online research or web scraping, where we took a statistical sample of history PhDs who had earned their degrees within a 10-year period, we learned some really interesting things. We learned that 25% of history PhDs find careers entirely outside of the professoriate, and in that 25%, there's a dizzying array of industries, from museums and libraries and K-12 teaching to government to business to entrepreneurial pursuits. Just about anything that anybody is doing, there's a PhD in history who's also doing it. But we did not find any baristas, a common misconception. But in addition, we found that about 50% of history PhDs find careers in tenure-track positions at 4-year universities, and the additional 25% there, if you're doing the math, were made up of those who had tenure-track careers at 2-year colleges or non-tenure-track careers at 2- or 4-year colleges, as well as a small sliver of people that we found that were retired or unemployed or deceased, or that we couldn't find. The full data for this is published online in The Many Careers of History PhDs. So from this research, the series of focus groups, as well as the many careers of history PhDs, we decided that the next step would be to enlist some partner institutions and to try out some strategies within history departments to address what we've learned about the multiplicity of career outcomes for history PhDs. And so the next phase of our initiative was the pilot phase. We partnered with 4 pilot sites, the University of New Mexico, the University of California, Los Angeles, the University of Chicago, and Columbia University, as well as engaging in activities here at the AHA and at our annual meeting. And we, for 3 years, we tried to figure out how could we address these issues about careers for history PhDs within history departments. So here at the AHA, we worked to create space for conversation about doctoral education in sessions at our annual meeting, in postings on AHA Today, which is the AHA blog, in Perspectives on History, which is our news magazine. And we also worked to create resources, many of them aimed at illuminating individual career paths or making available resources to doctoral students beyond the 4 pilot sites. So some resources that we created. What I Do, which is a series of short video interviews, about 5 minutes, with history PhDs in a variety of jobs. We have a semi-regular series in Perspectives on History called Career Paths, which is, again, history PhDs outside of the professoriate writing about how they got to their job, what they do in their job, and what they learned in graduate school that helps them do their job, that sort of thing. We also created a really successful program called AHA Career Contacts, which matches graduate students and early career historians with history PhDs who are working beyond the professoriate for one-time informational interviews. The best way to describe that actually is sort of like online dating, where the AHA is the algorithm, where a human being is the algorithm. And that has garnered amazing attention. We had over 200 graduate students and early career historians who've signed up to get advice, and then over 100 history PhDs who have signed up to give advice. So that has been hugely productive for those participants. But in addition, we also created a page about the 5 skills that I just mentioned previously. Communication, collaboration, quantitative literacy, intellectual self-confidence, and digital literacy, for graduate students to think about how they can develop those skills and what they are. We also created a faculty resource page, which is also organized around the 5 skills, aimed at helping faculty think about how they can integrate those 5 skills into their teaching and advising at the graduate level. And then we also recently, in January, launched Where Historians Work, which was an attempt to follow up on the many careers of history PhDs and to provide a complete snapshot of 10 years of all PhD graduates within 10 years from all PhD granted history departments in the US, and to slice the data in ways that addressed questions we had, such as what were departmental outcomes, what were field outcomes, those sorts of things. The AHA also, in an attempt to provide, well, because we wanted to provide help to departments beyond the pilot sites, we also gave out 10 departmental grants of $3,000 each to encourage experimentation in small-scale activities that addressed career diversity. And you can see reports about some of what they've done in some of the coverage in AHA Today. Perspectives. So that's what the AHA did, but some of the most interesting stuff happened at our 4 pilot sites, who tried a variety of things to think about how could they address this issue of careers for history PhDs. So they experimented creating internships both on and off campus. They experimented with creating different kinds of assistantships, so repurposing a teaching assistantship to do something else, some sort of internship. They pursued strategies of using the whole university, what partners existed already, such as career centers or humanities centers or other sorts of institutions that were within the university that could help them. They set up clinic courses. They revamped or created professionalization seminars. They hosted regional conferences to to address issues beyond their own department and to share the lessons that they were learning. Almost all of them created common spaces for graduate students to get together and to share their experiences and just talk about, they became common spaces for everything, but they were a way to encourage conversations about what comes after graduate school. And they also reached out to alumni and try to better figure out where they are and what they're doing and how they might be connected to the departments. And what we realized as the pilot sites pursued these activities, and particularly when we engaged in conversation with faculty about what they were doing, we realized that these 5 skills that we had identified as useful beyond the professoriate were actually useful for careers inside the professoriate as well. That in fact they were essential. That it was not a distraction from the purpose of a PhD in order to address outcomes for history PhDs. And this was an especially interesting insight for the AHA because it echoed a project we were simultaneously working on that addressed undergraduate education, which is the Tuning Project. The Tuning Project was a faculty-led initiative to answer what a history major knows, understands, and is able to do at the end of a 4-year degree. Through this project, we produced the Discipline Core, which is a set of reference points that were created by faculty and are meant to be locally articulated in the department curriculum. These are available online. And so as we worked with the pilot sites, as they experimented with all these activities, and as we sort of realized how important teaching was to the training of historians, no matter what their career outcome ended up being, we got to this next phase, which we are just now starting. And at its core, this phase of career diversity, the one that we are starting now, is an attempt to scale up the lessons of the 4 pilot sites. At its center will be 20 PhD granting history departments that will work to apply the insights from the pilot sites and the work of the AHA over the past 3 years. And in particular, the 5 insights that we think are the most important and these are listed actually online in the call for applications, but I will reiterate them here. 1, we realized that preparation for careers outside the academy fundamentally overlaps with preparation for 21st century careers inside the academy, both professional and otherwise. 2nd, that learning to be a professional historian cannot be separated from learning to teach history, including engaging with scholarly literature on history education. 3rd, that only 1 in 6 history PhDs pursue careers as faculty at R1 institutions, despite the fact that most graduate programs are designed with this career outcome in mind. So that's drawing from what we learned in the many careers of history PhDs. 4, that the experiences and learning opportunities that best prepare students for careers inside and outside the academy should be integrated into the curriculum rather than defined as external or supplemental. And finally, that the first step towards reconsidering a PhD program should be articulating its purpose. A department can choose to align this purpose with actual outcomes, aspirations, both or neither, but the choice should be intentional. And I think what bears some further articulation there is that we are not aiming to make all history PhD programs the same. We actually think that diversity is a strength of the history departments in the US, and that what we're asking history departments to do is to be able to articulate what a PhD from their department prepares their graduates to do. So because of these insights, the AHA will select 20 department post-career diversity graduate fellows during academics years 2018, 2019, and 2019, 2020. And each fellow, who will be a graduate student, an ABD graduate student in the department, will essentially hold an assistantship in higher education administration. The fellow will work with a team of faculty comprised of at least the chair of the department, the director of graduate studies, and at least 1 other tenured faculty member who should not be the advisor of the fellow. And this team will work with the fellow to develop programming and courses that apply the lessons of the pilot phase. To support that work, the AHA will subsidize the fellow's stipend over those 2 years, $7,500 per year. And the AHA will also provide an operating fund to the selected department of $8,000. As well as providing funding for the fellow and the faculty to travel to orientation and workshops designed to support the work. There is also additional money available for collaborative work across institutions, which can be stipulated in the applications to host fellows. And there will be more information on how to apply for these grants in late 2017. So you'll notice that those career diversity fellows won't enter departments until academic year 2018, which you'll notice is a year away from academic year 2017, which starts in the fall. And that's because one of the things we realized in working with the pilot sites and in conversations with other departments was that it takes some time to survey the landscape and prepare the ground for new work, if that's not mixing metaphors there. Basically, in order to be most effective, departments need to have time to figure out what resources are available to them, both inside the department and elsewhere in the university. And they also need time to engage their colleagues in discussion and to figure out what it is that makes their department distinctive, and to build partnerships. So in order to support that work, in order to support the preparatory work, and help departments write strong proposals so that they will be able to use these funds productively, the AHA is holding a series of faculty institutes, preliminary faculty institutes. These institutes are designed to be a sort of boot camp in career diversity, an introduction to the work that the AHA has done, but also the work of similar projects such as the NEH Next Gen PhD program, and also an overview of the scholarly literature on teaching and learning and history. These institutes will also be a chance for faculty to engage in conversation with like-minded colleagues at other institutions and really expand the conversation that we're able to have. Participation in these institutes is mandatory to apply for the Career Diversity Graduate Fellow grants. But by opening the faculty institutes to 40 departments, even though we will only be able to support 20 with a Career Diversity Fellow, we're trying to open the conversation as widely as possible. We're looking to include institutions, and we will continue to look for opportunities to include institutions not selected to host Career Diversity Graduate Fellows through activities at annual meetings. We'll help to provide speakers on campus events, etc., things like that. These institutes are also grounded in what we learned in our tuning project, which is that to be successful, efforts like this that are based around need to be faculty driven. Graduate faculty are the guardians of the graduate curriculum, and they ought to be. And that these also need to be locally defined. They need to be based in departments which have their own particular needs and resources and their own particular situation. So applications for these faculty institutes are due April 17th. All that's required are the names of the faculty who will be on the team to participate in the institute, which is modeled pretty intentionally after the team that will apply for a Career Diversity Graduate Fellowship. That's the chair, the DGS, and one more tenured faculty member. And then the answers to a short survey that are posted online. Applications are submitted through Interfolio. The survey is not designed to evaluate or rate the past activities of departments, but to help departments begin the conversation and to move forward. So it's really a forward-looking application, and as well, rather than a backwards assessment one. So some of the questions that I have received some questions I've received already. You might be interested in the dates of the faculty institutes. They're not 100% confirmed. We're waiting on a couple of details to fall into place, but they are very likely to be June 8th through 9th, 2017 in DC, and October 19th through 20th, 2017 in Chicago. And then there will also be a final workshop as part of the institutes, which will be held at the AHA annual meeting in January 2018 here in Washington, DC. The same faculty member does not have to attend every workshop. So part of having a team means you can share the responsibility for travel and reporting. And also, previous participation in career diversity events or related activities is not required to apply to the faculty institutes. It's perfectly okay to say we have only begun this conversation. That's very welcome as well. So I think now that I've only taken about 20 minutes, which is what I thought this would do, I'm going to open the webinar to questions. And the way to submit a question is to participate in the live chat, which should appear on the right side of your screen, in the window where you're viewing the YouTube Google Air broadcast. I see I have one question already. which is, at this stage, is it better to have more faculty signed on, or is 3 sufficient? 3 is completely sufficient. That's all that's required. If you are anticipating that you have more faculty who will be involved, you're welcome to include their information in the application. But 3 was what we articulated because we thought that that would be enough to get the conversation going. So are there any further questions? If you have trouble accessing the chat, you can also email me at eswafford@historians.org, and I will answer those emails as they come in. I see there's another question that's come in. This is also not about the faculty institutes, but about the career diversity graduate fellowships. The graduate fellow, and the question is, how will the graduate fellow be selected? Is that by the AHA or by the department? More information about this will be available at the end of 2017, so don't freak out too much about that. But the way we anticipate that to happen is that the graduate student will be included as part of the application to host a graduate student fellow, or will be chosen after the department is selected to host one. The AHA doesn't need to, we won't be receiving separate applications from graduate students. The application will come from the department, and the graduate student will participate in the department's activities. I have another question, which is, are the topics for the first 2 institutes set yet? For example, some faculty might be more interested in teaching competencies and others more interested in other topics. Thank you. That's a good question. Yes, they are set, but they're still being completely confirmed. That's a really interesting question, in part because one of the challenges and goals of this next phase of the initiative is to explore how all of these topics are interdependent, really, to use a buzzword. So that teaching competencies and career outcomes, maybe they are seen as inhabiting different fields within departments, within universities. They may be housed in different silos, but we're really interested in how these are related to the singular task of training historians, trained at the PhD level. And so we are not going to be setting up topics in divorcing those sets of topics. So for example, in the first Faculty Institute in June, right now we're thinking of having presentations from pilot site participants, from those who are involved in similar work, so such as the NEH Next Gen PhD projects. Also at the same institute, an overview of the scholarly literature on teaching and learning in history. And so that these are all part of the same project. Are there any other questions? I have another question, which is, when will selection be made of the 20 participating institutions? The applications for those institutions will be due in early 2018, and the selection will be made shortly thereafter. We hope that that gives enough time to set up what's needed for the academic year 2018-2019, which is the first year for the fellows. I think I should also stipulate that it's probably assumed, but participation in the faculty institutes is completely subsidized. The travel for one faculty member to the institutes and also the workshop at the annual meeting, which is included as part of that, is paid for. So I think if there aren't any more questions, I'm going to make sure I don't miss any emails. I think if there are not any more questions, we will go ahead and end the webinar. Like I said at the beginning, it has been recorded, and so will be posted on the website for you to return to later or share with your colleagues. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope it's been helpful. Oh, One more question. How many will be invited to attend the Faculty Institutes? We have funding for 40 departments to participate in the Faculty Institutes. So 40 faculty teams. Last call for questions. Okay, great. Thank you so much for attending. I hope it's been helpful to you. If you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to contact me at Emily Swafford at eswafford@historians.org, or to consult our website. There's lots of resources available there. I'm very much looking forward to receiving applications and to participation in the institutes. And thank you very much for attending today. Thanks.